Hey everyone, my name is David Rao and I'm the music teacher who blogs at makemomentsmatter.org. You can also find my ideas on Facebook, Pinterest, Instagram, Twitter, and a variety of other places when you search for my name, David Rao, or Make Moments Matter. I'm excited to be sharing with you all tonight some of my lesson ideas for the week, some things that I've been doing. Last week I did sort of a rundown of all K through 5 lessons, a really quick one. And this week I'm going to focus in a little bit more on 2nd and 3rd grade and go just a little bit more in depth. At least that's the plan. I say that's the plan because just a second ago I was scrambling because Facebook changed something again, because why not? Why not make things so much more difficult? This is like my 100th or 105th or something Musical Mondays video, so why not change it, Facebook? I had things figured out, but not anymore. Anyway, so the plan this week is to talk about 2nd and 3rd grade a little bit more in depth and share some of the resources and ideas that I'm using there with those grades. If you see or if you have a question about something I'm using or a resource or a game or something that you see, I have a whole page on my blog dedicated to the links and things that I talk about in these videos. You just go to makemomentsmatter.org and click on the links, on the video tab, and you can find Musical Mondays Recap. Or if you're watching on Facebook or YouTube or wherever, or you're listening on the podcast, at the bottom of the caption for this episode, you should be able to find a direct link to those links on the links page. Instagram, it's on my LinkedIn profile. If you want, there's a Facebook group called Every Moment Matters Music Education Community. I encourage you to join it. So after this video ends, you can still go and ask questions and talk with other people who are like-minded and learn more as we go. It's always great to have more friends and more allies and learn more things as we go. And one more quick announcement before I get into lesson ideas and content and stuff. So last week I mentioned that I just put out a new... It's basically like an online workshop, an online course, all about ukulele in the elementary music classroom. Could maybe be middle school too, because some of the concepts sort of transcend just elementary. But I'm calling it Ukulele 101, and it has 40 videos with over 4.5 hours of content, starting with like, what kind of ukulele would you buy for yourself, and what could you buy for your class, and where do you buy it, and what are accessories you might want if you want that. What do you say to parents? And then there are all sorts of other things like how do you get started, where do you get started, what do you do on day one, how do you talk about strumming, what's the progression of chords that you should teach or could teach, and then like what do you do about centers, how can you expand their chord library. So even if you're a beginner, it gives you a lot of stuff for that. If you're intermediate or have some experience, it should give you some ideas and things along the way too, I hope. So that's out there if you're interested. You can find that at courses.makemomentsmatter.org, or you can just click the link in my LinkedIn profile, or it's also on the links page for this week. So if you're interested, that's there, Ukulele 101, and I hope that it's helpful. If you are a beginner, intermediate, if you want to teach kids, if you just want some ideas for yourself, that's there if you want it. Okay, so a couple follow-up things. Just a couple quick things while I'm thinking about it. So this weekend was sort of an unexpected long week for me, long weekend for me, because I knew I was going to have today off for Martin Luther King Jr. Day. But Friday we had off because the COVID numbers in our district were so high that they couldn't staff the building. So we had Friday off. So I brought some work home with me. I had just had some centers. I printed them off. I laminated them. I was making more copies of some of the rhythm sort centers that I did. And I thought, hey, while they're sitting out, why not talk a little bit about them? So a couple things. I laminate all my centers because I know I'm going to use them forever and ever and ever. And so I laminated these out. I printed them sort of small. I printed them 9 to a page. That's one of the options. So I did, these are my rhythm sort centers that I've talked about, I know before. So like here's the farm version. I also printed out this weekend the Star Wars version. And so it just has, this specific set of centers has rhythm words, words based on a theme. So the farm one has things like dirty pig, calf, let's see, what's another one? Farmer, right? And so I can print them out 9 to a page. I use my paper cutter at home, cut them out. That took a while. Watched a movie or something while I was doing that, right? Because that's what you do on the weekends or weeknights as a teacher. But if you cut out 9 to a page, I found that this Walmart makes this It's a snack bag. It's a square size, and the square snack bags, you get 100. It's 5.1 inches by 4.7 inches. It is just the perfect size for these little centers, and it makes it really easy to put things away. It doesn't take up a lot of space, which is really nice. The snack ones, or the sandwich ones, can get a little bit big. So I think these are really, really wonderful. Okay, so a couple tricks about doing centers if you're interested, just because while I have them out here, why not? So I have the 9, it makes 9 different centers, right? Because it prints like 9 to a page. So I have 9 different sets. So on the back of each set, I write the number that set of the set that this card belongs to, right? So like all of these will have a little 5 on the back, right? That's probably not new for a lot of you. And then of course I write the number on the bag. But one of the other things that I do is that I do a different color for each number. So 5s are blue, 4s are pink, and 3s are purple. So just like it's one more thing to make it that much easier when kids are sorting. If things get mixed up, I'm not just looking at number, I'm also looking for different colors, so it's easier to sort of spread those out as I go. And let's see, there's one more thing I wanted to show you. Oh, yes. This was a magical revelation for me years ago, that if you're creating centers and you have these little plastic bags, the thing that kids inevitably do is that they take their centers and they put them in the bag, they zip it all the way closed, and they go, because they want to like blow any air out or make them small or pop the bag or whatever. So if you take just a hole punch and you hole punch just in the corner, it lets the bag vent, so when they go, it doesn't pop your bag, and you're not replacing the bag every like 2 days because it's exploded. So that was like a revelation for me years ago. I thought I would share. It's one of my favorite things about centers, is learning all the little tricks that make it easier the next time you do it. And I've made a lot of centers in my time, so those are just a couple things. But like these, then this all breaks down. So I have now 9 sets in here. One of the other things I realized about COVID is that I can't have kids work in small groups, or couldn't at the time. And so what I would take, these cards, it's like 30 different rhythm words, I would just split them in half. So instead of ending up with 9 centers, I came up with 18. Or you could subdivide even further and have even more sets based out of that one resource. So you're not printing as many copies. You're just printing those copies and then just sort of dividing it up so it's easier. Because like, who wants to sit and make like 30 individual bags? Not me. But if there are 30 words in here, the kids can they can do it with just 15 words or maybe 10 words or whatever, depending on the activity you're doing. So it's nice to have that option and not be so stressed out about like, I have to sit for 5 hours and cut out centers. No, you don't have to do that. Also, I would totally say if you're doing centers like this where it's like square cards, get a paper cutter. Don't do it by hand. You're going to have carpal tunnel and hate the process. Anyway, I figured since I had these out, so we're doing Farm and Star Wars. Those are coming up. And then I also have, which I've not cut out yet, the ocean themed ones. That's coming. Okay, another follow-up I wanted to talk about since I have, I'm thinking about it. So last week I talked a little bit about my kindergartners and how we're doing instrument exploration at the Orff Instruments. So the xylophones, the metallophones, the glockenspiels, and how we've done several different activities this year to talk about like instrument exploration, to get mallets in their hand, to get them trying different things, and basically it's a hot mess every time, because no matter how much you talk about procedure and no matter how much you like walk them through things, it's kindergarten in their first semester and things are weird and they're still figuring out how to like not pee themselves and how to open like milk cartons or hold a pencil. I mean, all these like basic fundamental things. There's a lot going on for kindergarten their first year, and all like, I mean, if you think especially about like instruments, like the hand-eye coordination that it takes and the process of getting the fine motor skills, it's just a lot to do. So most of the things in kindergarten for me are exploratory. It's like understanding how the instruments work and figuring out mallets and playing around and trying different things, making different sounds. How can you walk on the instrument? How can you run on the instrument? How can you jump on the instrument? What do those things look like? How can you relate that to like physically jumping or physically moving? You know, like how do you make those connections? And so part of what I'm doing with kids is helping them make those connections where they'll see running and then they'll try running, or they'll see hopping and then they'll try hopping with mats. So make some of those connections. One of the things that I've always struggled with kids is trying to get them to understand like high and low on the bars. Like I always think like, this is easy. It's big bars and small bars. I don't understand why they don't get that connection right away. And every year I'm always like fighting, like, because some kids will get it right away and some kids just don't. And so one of the things that I found is these little tricks to help kids, especially kinder or first grade, talk about high and low on the Orff instruments, is to give them lots of visuals. So if you have access to step bells are really, really fun. You don't need a class set of them, but if you have like one as an example, it's really fun to talk about, like, going up the steps. Because these look like stairs to kids, right? So like these make sense to kids. The idea of going up and going down. But that can't be the only visual, right? Because like you can then show them the stairs, and you can make the connection between the bigger bars on the lower steps and the smaller bars on the higher steps. But as long as I've used step bells, I think they're a great visual. They make sense. Kids see your mallet moving up and they hear the pitch going up, and that is great. But I don't feel like that is like the best example to help them internalize the understanding and the knowledge of it. So one of the books that I've been trying out this year is called Up, Up, Down by Robert Munsch. I learned about this at Orff Levels this summer, and I've done a couple of the Robert Munsch books, but not this one. And in this book, there's this little girl, Anna, and she likes to climb, and she climbs and she falls, and it happens several times, and then she goes out and climbs a tree, and then, the whole book is based around this idea of climbing and falling, and how does that work? And so for my kids, it's great for instrument exploration. And after I had like started the lesson and thought about the lesson, it was like around Christmas time that I was doing this lesson, and I just randomly picked up this like sparkly tree I have in my room, and I was like, okay, hold on. Because again, I'm trying to get the kids to make the connection between small bars being high sounds and big bars being low sounds, or just high and low matching small and big, right? Okay, so I said, if this were a real tree, obviously it's not a real tree. If this were a real tree, which part is the top and which is the bottom? This part, is it the top or the bottom? It's the top of the tree. Okay, how about this? It's the bottom of the tree, right? Kids are like, Mr. Rao. Okay, and is this the small part of the tree or the big part of the tree? Small part of the tree. Big part of the tree, small part of the tree. Big. Okay, great. Now, oh no, here comes a logger. Timber! Okay, so the tree's fallen over. Is this the top of the tree or the bottom of the tree? It's still the top of the tree, even though it's fallen over, right? Okay, is this the top of the tree or the bottom of the tree? It's the bottom. Okay, small or big? It's small. Small or big? Okay, so the bottom is big, the top is small. Okay, you ready for your quiz? Oh my goodness. Okay, top of the tree or bottom of the tree? Top of the tree. Top of the tree or bottom of the tree? Bottom of the tree. Okay, so is the top, this part, is this the small part of the tree or the big part of the tree? Small. Okay, small or big? Great. Okay, hold on. Time for another quiz. Ooh, oh. Okay, now even though I'm holding it upside down and this part is above the other part, this is still, if you're thinking about the tree, this is still the top of the tree, right? Like it's actually the top of the tree, right? So even though I'm flipping and moving this tree visual all around, I'm flipping it around, I'm putting this on its side, I'm putting it on, on the point upside down. Kids still fundamentally can tell you even though the top of the tree is pointing down, it is the top of the tree. You can't fool me, right? And then for some reason, the kids just are like, perfect. Top of the tree is small, bottom of the tree is big. So then I would pull out like, maybe the step bells again and talk about where the top of the stairs, the bottom of the stairs, and the top, oh my gosh, they're smaller than, or maybe I'll pull out a xylophone a glockenspiel where the bars are pretty obvious, like an octave and a half or 2 octaves or whatever you have of your glockenspiel. They can see the smaller bars and the bigger bars. And so holding that up and showing them that visual really does sort of cement in them, like, even if I turn it around, even if I flip it on its side. And so then when you have if you're holding the glockenspiel like an evergreen tree where the small bars are on top moving down to the big bars on bottom, if you're holding it on its side, they can make that connection. Well, then timber, turn it over, and hopefully they can still make that connection between the small bars being on the top and the big bars being on the bottom. Like I said, I was using the step bells for years, and that was a great analogy, and they sort of got it. And then I started using that in conjunction with this evergreen that I would flip around. This evergreen, not a real evergreen tree, but I would flip it around, and kids were like, I get it. Like it made more sense to them. So then I started looking for other visuals I could do the same thing with. Mountains, right? Well, a mountain, the small part is the top part, the big part is the bottom part. Okay, what else can you do, And so like helping them sort of make that connection makes sense to them. But the tree was so easy because you can chop down a tree and it can fall on its side. And even if you do, the small part is still the top of the tree. The big part is still the bottom of the tree. So this visual of the tree has changed my life. So I keep this out all year long now. Like it's still sitting on the shelf because I still refer to it, even though it's no longer like Christmas time or whatever. I still have this visual up because it makes sense to them. Also because it's sparkly and why not? So anyway, so that made a lot of sense to them. And then even after up, up, down, now that we're doing Wee Willie Winky, which is what we learned in the last week, and we're doing up and down the stairs, now I can still make that same connection and talk about big stairs, small stairs, and we could talk about going up and down. This adds another 3D element, the step bells do, because you're, physically going up or physically going down. And then you can pull out the other great Robert Munch book called Mortimer. That is another great way to explore the instruments. But no matter what, kindergarten is a lot of exploring and a lot of trying. And so I think that I have succeeded if by the end of the year they know how to take out and put away the instrument, maybe. They feel comfortable holding mallets, maybe the correct way. They are excited about playing. That's an important thing. And that they have a little bit of experience. And hopefully they make a connection between the small bars being higher sounds and the big bars being lower sounds, or just high and low matching small and big. That's a bit of a process, but like I said, the Evergreen Visual, so amazingly helpful that I found this year. And I wanted to share that because it's something that even though we moved on past Christmas, it's still out. Let's see. Oh, someone said on Facebook they used the copycat poem to play the Orff instruments. Cool. Talked about making the connections between that. Someone said, do you have any tips on great paper cutters and laminators to use at home? I like the swing line paper cutter. Since we're going back and talking about centers really quick, the swing line, you can get the super heavy one. I have this one. It's super heavy dude. It's not really super heavy duty. It's maybe $30 or something, but it's not going to fall apart. I can put this on the links page if you're interested, but I'm pretty sure it's on my Amazon page. Anyway, it's totally worth it. I don't use an at-home laminator. My school has lamination that they do for us, but I've used them in the past. They're fine. I don't know. I'm not great with those, but anyway, the swing line paper cutter I will absolutely champion because it's amazing. You can also get the one that's like solid wood on the bottom, but it's way more expensive and way heavier. So I don't know. I think this one is just fine. Anyway, okay, let's talk about second grade because I want to spend the bulk of the time talking about second and third grade. Last week I said focus on second grade, and then I had maybe 10 minutes to talk about it. So I want to spend more time talking about second grade today, and then hopefully get into third grade and talk about that as well. So second grade, what are we doing this week? Well, again, things are sort of weirdly interrupted by COVID, but what are we actually doing? So we're starting to get ready for a program. So I have to sort of transition a little bit and do a little bit more song heavy of things. So that we're getting ready for the concert, but we're still finishing out some of the concepts that don't fit so well with concerts. So we're sort of moving more heavily into song content, even though we're finishing up with some other things. So that's sort of what we're doing right now. So we're getting ready for our Ocean concert. So there are a couple songs in there that we're doing that I'll talk about on another podcast or another video. But we're sort of the class sort of starts with that, and then we add those in as we go. Somebody on Instagram's Kimberly said, do you keep all the bars on the instrument for exploratory work? Yes. Unless there's a reason not to. But for kindergartners, I don't want them taking off bars, and taking off bars for that many kids at once is a lot of work. So no, I leave them on. For exploratory stuff like this, it doesn't matter as much to me. But you could. Up to you. Sorry. There's a little sidebar. I saw that pop up on Instagram, and I knew I was going to forget if I didn't go back and talk about that right now. Okay, so we've been talking a little bit about note values. In the past couple weeks leading up to this, my kids, they've known about the half note for a while. We've been talking about the half note for a while. We added in the half rest this last week. We went to the note neighborhood and met Sassy Half Note's Hat, her half rest. And so we use that PowerPoint to sort of guide us into the concept of the half rest. And then one of the things that I always try and do with kids after we've experienced it, we've experienced it in play or movement or song or whatever, and then we've also labeled it. I like to have them give them a chance to create it. And so what I have kids do often is that I give them whiteboards and then have them come up with or create there. With older kids last year, because they were all bringing their iPads to music class a lot anyway, we used iPads a little bit, but they're not as easy to create with. I just find that with my kids, that whiteboards are so much easier because you can just wipe it off really quickly. The iPad, there's always an extra step. There's always something glitching, something weird. So I don't use iPads for creating like this. Even though my kids all have one, I use whiteboards still. Rebecca says, where can I find that PowerPoint? It's linked on the links page, or you can just find my Teachers Pay Teacher store. Just search Note Neighborhood. I know I've linked that on the links page sometime before, but you can always just check that out if you go to TPT. So what I'm going to show you now is you're going to imagine all my kids having whiteboards and erasers and markers. And then I have, on my iPad, I'm able to mirror it up on my projector. So I have Apple TV in my room, and I'm able to mirror what's on my iPad and put it up on the screen. So that's what you're going to see here in just a second. I'm going to mirror it for you so you can see what my screen looks like. There's an app we use at my school called Sketches School. At least that's what I know that it's called. It's one of the apps that our district has in its manager of options. So I think that it's also called Sketches on the App Store if you wanted to go buy it. I think it's free, but like I said, it's sort of tricky because it's in our district's set of options. But there are other drawing programs you could use if you want. This is just the one that I tend to use because it's one that my district has available. So anyway, so we're talking about half rest, we're talking about half note, and then one of the first things I do is that once we've experienced that, then we're going to create it. And here, let me show you sort of what we do. Okay, I'm going to try and turn this. Sometimes works Instagram, so let me try and move y'all over so you can see this. Okay, so what you're seeing now, and Instagram, I hope you can see this. You're going to also see my desktop a little bit. Let me see if I can keep y'all here. Sorry, Instagram, I'm trying. This never works well. I'm trying. There we go. Okay. So, on the iPad, so Sketches School, you have all these different tools you can use. I tend to just use the marker because it seems to work the best to give kids a view of what their marker would look like if they're doing it with a whiteboard. Anyway, so we start out by kids get to create all the notes that we know. So first we start out with a quarter note. And so, actually I'm going to switch to this one too. It's a little smaller. So we start out with a quarter note, which I always tell kids is just an oval and a stem, and you color it in. I don't get too stressed out about what exactly it looks like because I want kids to focus on the process of the creating and worry less about, is it perfect? Because mine are not perfect. And so I want them to, I want them to spend time focusing on the note value instead of trying to perfect the note itself. So anyway, so we do our quarter note, we do eighth note, which again, I just tell them is oval, stem, color in, oval, stem, color in, and then put that beam on the top, just beam them together. Then we do our rest, which I tell them is a slanty Z with a C hooked on the bottom. And actually, when I first intro that, way back in, I don't know, first grade or something, when we first do it, I always say it's a slanty Z, like not a nice Z. Like your homeroom teacher would be mad if she was finding out I was letting you do a slanty Z like this. But you do a little slanty Z, and then you put a letter C on the bottom. And I actually do them in 2 different colors so they can sort of visualize the Z and the C. And then I actually do put it together in the one color. Again, I'm not going for perfection. I honestly don't care if it looks exactly the way it should. These are second graders. It doesn't need to be perfect, but I just want it to be recognizable as a quarter note. If it's really bad, I'll go back and talk to them, but at this point, don't care so much. Okay, and then we also have talked about, and sometimes I do this in a different color for them too. We've talked about a half note, which is just an oval and a stem. And then the half rest, well, that's the new one, so I'm going to leave that one off. So when we first do that, when I first show kids the half rest, I always show them that it's a line, a box on top, and then you color in that box. And it's confusing because, yes, the half note is empty. It's half there. And so why is the half rest not also empty like the half note? It doesn't make sense. But it's just how it is. So I always make sure to remind them to color it in. Some things that I always look for, kids, there's always one kid who does this, who like makes a box and then puts a box on top. There's always that kid. And I say, I show kids, I'm like, oh, that's so much work. It's so much easier. It's so much easier if you just do a line and then put a box on top. Right. And sometimes also I will show kids that like when it's time to eventually do this, usually if I'm explaining this to 4th or 5th grade or something, I will go this route and also explain this. But with second graders, I don't really do that. I also, with the older grades, show them that like if we're doing this on a staff, when you're making that half rest, you don't draw the line and then put the box on. Right, you just put the box on the line and then color it in. So like for right now, we do this line as a placeholder with the box on top. But actually, when you do it on the treble clef or on the bass clef or whatever, you're not going to draw that bottom line, that like bass line. So that's why it makes even less sense to draw like a box and put a box on top. But there's always that kid who does that. So I always mention it and I show it just so that kids have that sort of in their head. Okay. So let's say that we did all of this and I showed them. Okay, those are our options, right? But we're going to play a game today. We're going to play a game, and it's a fun game. It's called Magic Number, and so the magic number, let's see. Well, first I'm going to put my bass on here. Hold on, let me put my little bass on here. So this says we're using tas today. Okay, and how many tas? Well, let's see. The magic number today is 4. And so we start out the lesson by talking about magic number. We do that, and I say, great. Okay, so if you're going to do 4, I'll just switch colors again. You're going to do oval, stem, color in, oval, stem, color in, oval, stem, color in, oval, stem, color in. Whew! Oh, gosh, I need to connect there. Okay, perfect. Let's see. Let's change that. The magic number now is, well, let's make it 5. Okay, if the magic number is 5, then all I have to do is just do another oval stem color in. Easy peasy, lemon squeezy, right? Okay, but and I give kids time to do that, to make that change. Oh no, the magic number is not that anymore. The magic number is 3. Okay, well, so then we don't have to add anything. In fact, we have to take something away. So that's not down to 3 yet. Now that's down to 3. Perfect. Okay, so we took away 2, and now we're at 3. Ooh, yeah, using math language. We took away 2, now we're at 3. Okay, so I play around with that a little bit, and then I say, okay, everyone stop and watch this. And so I have them actually like put down their markers, cap their markers, and look up. Because if you don't give a command like, okay, cap that marker and look up here, they will just keep going. They will just keep doodling or whatever. And I really do want them to focus on this. So I say, okay, well, one time I was playing magic number and someone made the magic number 12. Can you believe it? 12 is crazy. But okay, they said 12. So let's do that. And I'm going to make 12. But no problem. I'm good at this. So I did an oval stem color in, oval stem color in, oval stem color in. That's 3. Oval stem 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Is that actually 12? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Yeah, that's 12. Okay. But you know what? By the time I had finished my 12 quarter notes, my 12 tas, the person had changed the magic number. And guess what they changed it to? They changed it to 4. They thought they were going to get me because they're like, oh, he's going to have to erase all that other stuff. But I didn't want to erase. I'd just done all this work. So in fact, I have a little trick. Watch this. Instead of erasing, I can take a bar line. And if I count out 1, 2, 3, 4, I can add a bar line after my 4th one. And now I have 1, 2, 3, 4 here. These 4 are safe and do not need to be eliminated, because there's a bar line and there are only 4 together. So perfect, the magic number still works. But on this side of the bar line, there are how many left? Let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Can't have that. 8 won't work. But if I put a bar line here, now in between each bar line or in each measure, now there are 4. Well, guess what? The kid who did the magic number of 4 was so furious because they thought that they had tricked me. And so then they changed the magic number. They changed the magic number to 3. Oh, they thought they had gotten me, but actually they had not, because I just erased my bar line. I didn't erase anything else. I just erased the bar line. And now I'm going to redo my bar line, and I'm going to do it every 3rd note. Ha-ha! Well, the kid who made the magic number was, again, furious because they thought they had gotten me. So instead of moving on, they went back and they tried to do it again, and they switched it to 6. Well, this is actually really easy because, look, we have groups of 3. So if I just erase this bar line here, now I have a group of 6. And if I erase this one, I have another group of 6. Ooh, the bar line is so helpful. And then they thought they would get me again. They were really frustrated because I kept defeating their challenge, right? I kept defeating them. And so then they said, fine, try this. And they made the magic number 2. So then I went in and I took my bar line again and I just separated every group of 2. And they got so furious because I kept not getting defeated by their little trick. But anyway, so it was like they were very tricky kids, but I was still so smart because I knew about the bar line, and bar lines are really helpful. So guess what? You're going to get to try this. So then I have kids take their, thing. I say, okay, the magic number is, well, actually, before I even tell you the magic number, I want you to draw a bar line sort of in the middle of the space. Okay. So now the magic number is 4. So on each side of that bar line, you can draw 4 tas. Do that to start, because look, it says 4 over ta. And that's this visual of the 4 over the quarter note. That's what I'm going to use to start. When I talk about time signatures, eventually it's going to change to 4 over a ta into 4, 4. But for now, this is a just fine visual that helps kids sort of understand what we're doing. Okay, so 4 over ta. So great. So we're going to make ooh, that is really small. Let me try that again. So I've got oval stem color in, oval stem color in, oval stem color in, oval stem color in. On one side, that's 4. Okay, on the other side, I've got oval stem color in, oval stem color in, oval stem color in, oval stem color in. Perfect. Okay, and then I let kids do that. So they basically have this set up. And then I say, hold on, wait a minute. Do you remember way up here we were talking about the notes that we know, the notes and the rests that we know? Well, okay, the ta is worth 1 beat of sound, but the ta rest, the quarter rest, is also worth 1 beat, but it's a beat of silence. Could we, if we wanted to, take out one of these tas and replace it with a rest? Would you still then would the magic number still work? Would you still have 4 on each side? Yeah, so let's do that. So let's erase, I'm going to erase this one, and I'm going to erase this one, and I have to replace them with a rest. So now I have ta, ta, ta. That's 4 beats, but one of those beats is a beat of silence, but it's still a beat, right? So 1, 2, 3, 4, and same here, 1, 2, 3, 4. So I've got 4 beats on each side. Perfect, amazing, great. But wait a minute, don't we also have toddy? Toddy, or TT, you might call it, right? The 2 eighth notes beamed together. Those also equal 1 beat of sound. I know it's confusing, but those together, you would think it'd be 2, right? But it's not. It's actually one beat. These 2 together create 1 beat. I used to say something like, it's like Captain Planet. They come together to make 1 beat. But no kids understand that reference. So then I started to be like, it's like Power Rangers. They like come together to make the Zord. And they're like, some kids. Anyway, whatever. I just say like those 2 together equal 1 beat. So anyway, so then we go through and we say, actually I don't even need to erase, because really what I'm going to do is I'm just going to add on, and I'm going to create, another ta next to that ta and beam it together. It's going to give me a ta-dee. Okay, cool. Wait, don't we also have notes that are equal 2 beats? The half note is 2 beats of sound, and the half rest is 2 beats of silence. So could I replace something in here with a half note and still keep my magic number happy? Yes, I could. So here's what but I can't do this. This won't work. If I take out this ta rest, this quarter rest, and I put in a half note, that won't work, because I may have 1, 2, 3, 4 things here, but the half note is worth 2 beats. So it's actually 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, right? Like this is like, it's got like a superpower. It's like, it's doubled up because it's worth 2 beats. So you have to think of it as really 2 instead of just 1 thing. It's actually 2 beats. So if I was going to put this half note here, I'd have to take out something else, because this measure right now is 5 and my magic number says 4. So why don't I just take out the thing behind it? That gives it some space. It allows it to work, like live and like breathe in there. And now we have 1, 2, plus 2 more is 4. Ah, my magic number is happy. Can I do the same over here, but with a half rest? So we go through that process. We do all of that, right? So let's see. Maybe take that out and do a half rest. Cool. Then one of the other things, if we have time in class left, I'll say like, okay, but what if I change my magic number to 3? Okay, well, what could we take out? What could we change? How could we do that? What if I said my magic number, what? So like you can play around with a lot of things. One of the things I like to do is like when we're at, so maybe we do maybe we do this, and we change and we're set up for magic number of 3. So 3, 4 time basically. And what if I say now, last thing, if we have time, last thing, magic number is 5. Can you make each side of the bar line 5 beats by only adding 1 thing into the measure? This is another thing to try and force them to use the half note or the half rest, right? So if I issue that challenge of it's 3 right now, but we're going to go to the magic number of 5, can you do that by only adding 1 thing in each side? Sure. If I had the half rest here, I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. If I had the half rest here, because guess what, I'm doing half rest right now, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So just first of all, giving them the chance to like create these notes, make these notes, try these notes is really helpful for kids. Letting them like explore how that works, and then giving them challenges like this to make them think and rethink and rethink. You're forcing them to use these concepts in a lot of different ways. They're using them, you're giving them the number and saying, fill up the measure. You're saying, what can you substitute? You're saying, ooh, I have a challenge. You need to, the magic number has changed. How can you adapt to that? So they're having to think and rethink and retry in a lot of different ways, using these note values. And that's really challenging for some kids, but it's also good for kids because, you're getting them to think about, how do these notes go together? What are the note values? How do they work together? How can you change them, interchange them? How can you do different things? And then you're also changing out the magic number, the time signature. You could also do something if you wanted like this. And I had a little bit of extra time with one class, so I went for it. Sorry. We made our magic number 2, and I changed the from a ta to a half note. So then I said, okay, well, fine. Now in each side, you can only fit, let's start with just making, 2 half notes. And then we went from there. But then changing that is eventually going to show them the time signature itself can also change, and that affects what happens behind it. It's like, not complicated music theory, right? Like, it's not tricky for kids. It's just having them interface and try it in different ways and explore it in different ways gets them really good at it before you ever introduce like what a time signature is. So then down the line, I have a Note Neighborhood PowerPoint that like talks about time signature, and the way that it does it, it talks about like all the note friends are waiting in line for like a roller coaster, and it says you could only have 4. You can only have 4 people in a car, only 3 people in a car, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So this is like, it's like another way to like get them to think about how notes go together, why would they go together. And I put a link to those PowerPoints in the notes page if you're interested. But using those stories also sort of help kids think about that. Rebecca says, I was trying to make activities like this with less teacher talk. Have you modified this for that? No. And the reason that I talk so much with kids on this activity is because this is like a prime example of a critical thinking strategy called a think aloud. And so the reason I'm talking so much is because I want kids to like think see what's going on in my head with my thought process of, okay, well, I only have 2 beats. What could I put here? Well, I could put 2 tas, or it's like kids with something like this, they understand some of the concepts, but when they see you do it, when they hear your thought process of like, well, I could put this here, I could put this here, I could put this here, it's actually really valuable. Sometimes kids will like see the teacher example and then they can copy that, right? But they can't always, they can see the teacher example and they maybe understand the concept, but they can't see all the different ways that things fit together. And when you do something like a think aloud where you're like, and this is a great example of like an overhead projector, or you're doing the activity in front of the kids and you're showing them why you're making the choices you're making, explaining things along the way, that helps them understand more of the process, especially if you say, oh man, there's a snag here, or there's the magic number changed, or well then what do I have to do to adapt to that? Like the reason I talk so much on a lesson like this is because it is complicated content, and kids, it benefits them to see that, if that makes sense. Sorry, Rebecca. So you're right. Yes, less teacher talk in general, but for something like this, I specifically do talk more as I'm doing the example because I think it's great for them to see that process because it's sort of new. So like, Rebecca, let me go back and say, if this were like 3rd or 4th time we're doing something like this, or if I were getting them ready to do it in centers or more independently, then yeah, I would talk a lot less. I would give them the challenges and maybe I would show student examples later or something, but I would talk less. The first time though, I'm going to talk a little bit more because I want them to see that process, and like, especially because like, oh, what's another great example? Especially like half note versus 2 beamed 1/8 notes. That is very confusing for some kids because there are 2 notes in the beamed 1/8 notes why isn't that 2 beats? Why is the half note 2 beats and the beamed 1/8 notes are not? It doesn't make sense. The visual doesn't add up, right? So like talking them through some of those more difficult things and reinforcing the correct answer is really cool and beneficial. Okay, so that was a lot, but oh my gosh, thank you for that question. That was a great question. Okay, so let's talk about 3rd grade. So 3rd grade is another one where it's sort of a thinker. This is another one that like when I'm doing, I've done workshops on critical thinking, and when I do those workshops about critical thinking, this is one of the ones I use as an example, and so I wanted to share a little bit about it. today and sort of show you what goes into that. So my third graders, we're getting ready for a big thing at our school called International Festival, and it's sort of linked in with the concert for the year, performance for the year. And so I am showing kids, we're learning it's a new song right as we go. So this song we're going to learn is an Austrian went yodeling. For a lot of people, this is like a fun sort of a camp song, sort of a silly song. And yes, it is that. But along the way, there are a lot of cool things we can do. So, for example, when we first talk about the song, I say I have a song. It's from a new place. We just done a folk dance from France, so this new place is a different place in the world. So we just did a song from France, which we would say that song is French, and now we're going to do a song from a place called, well, hold on, and then we talk about different countries and how sometimes you can have words to describe where that thing is from. So like something from Canada is Canadian, or something from Mexico is Mexican, something from Brazil is Brazilian, something from China is Chinese, or from Japan is Japanese, or Korea is Korean. You could talk about those connections of words. Because this one is from Austria, and kids often mix up Austria and Australia, so I make a big deal about like the country it's named after and blah, 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 and how it is sort of important. I also make a big deal because the language you speak in Austria is not Austrian, it's German. And so it's like fun to have these like things that, again, kids like assume pattern, right? So like if it's from Japan, it's Japanese, or like think about language. The language in Japan is Japanese. The language in, you can think of Spain as Spanish, but like, what's the primary language that we speak in Mexico? It's not Mexican, it's Spanish. So it's fun to like have those conversations as like a setup. Again, another reason I have this conversation is because I know my third grade team, like the homeroom teachers, are setting up the international festival where each kid, we're talking about different countries around the world, and they're talking about traditional clothing from that country, and we're talking about all of that. So talking about the language, talking about differences between countries is like, I know the third grade teachers have come to me and been like, what are you talking about? Like, you're reinforcing our content? Yes, I am. It's fun song, but like it reinforces content too. So I often show this visual, and I'll see if I can pull it up. Sometimes these visuals work just so well, and sometimes they really don't. Okay, so let me see. Yeah, see, here's a great example of how it doesn't work. Let me see if I can try this. There we go. Boom. Okay, so it sort of worked. Hold on. Let me flip you around Instagram. So I show them this visual of where Austria is, Austria in relation to the rest of the world. We talk about that on the map. And I always say, like, Austria is not Australia. See how very far apart they are. They're very different, right? And so having that conversation is cool. And then we talk about what does it look like in Austria. And here's a picture from Austria. And we talk about the Alps and these beautiful mountains, these super high mountains. And at the top of the mountains, it's snowy even sometimes in the warmer times, because the mountains are so high that it's so cold up there. And we talk about what Austria looks like, and it's so beautiful that sometimes people like to go out into the mountains or go out into nature, and they like to go out and sing and be in nature because it's so beautiful out in nature. Well, the person in our story, the Austrian in our story, does that. He wants to go out and sing in nature. And so our Austrian, and this is what our Austrian looks like, he wants to go out into nature and sing his little song. And again, I show them a picture of this is, one, because I want them to know that this is like traditional clothing and not what people wear like day to day. Like maybe you wear that sometimes, but not all the time. And also because I want them to know, like, this is a traditional thing that you might wear there. Again, another part of what my teachers do preparing for this international festival is they talk about like traditional clothing. They talk about something like a person might wear from that country. And so showing like lederhosen helps my students make that connection between like traditional garb and contemporary garb and what you'd wear. And it's also a nice comparison because when you talk about like Native Americans, or you talk about pilgrims, or you talk about whatever, like kids get this idea in their head sometimes of like people from a certain country wear these old-timey clothes, or Native Americans only wear, like they get these visuals, or maybe it's the clip art that people use or whatever, but they get these visuals of what a person wears or looks like. And I always, show like traditional clothing and be like, that's what maybe they wore a long time ago, but now, it's fun again to make those connections, to help them think about, compare, contrast what is maybe traditional and what is current. Okay, so I say our Austrian was going to go out singing, and in Austria sometimes they sing like this. They go yodel 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 hee hoo, which is called what? And kids are like, it's yodeling. Oh my gosh, great. Okay, there are 4 parts to this yodeling song. And I want to see if you can. Well, I have some questions about the 4 parts, but here are the 4 parts. Let me sing them for you. So the first part goes yodele kikia yodele cuckoo, yodele kikia yodele cuckoo, yodele kikia yodele cuckoo, yodele kikia oh. Now there are the 4 parts. I think one of them is different from the other 3. See if you can figure out which one it is. And again, this is a critical thinking thing, is prepping kids. If you're going to ask them a question about example, you should give them the question before they hear the example, because it always makes me think about when I was taking the praxis, like the certification test to be a music teacher, and it was like, listen to this example. And I'm like listening, I'm like, okay, is it a mode, or like, am I listening for like a motive, or like because the question didn't tell me what to listen for, and it was like, and it stops and it's like, what was the meter? And I was like, meter? There was like, no, what meter? Like it was just a weird example. Anyway, so that's like anytime I think about asking kids a question about a sung example, I always think like, I need to ask them before I do the example. So okay, I'm going to sing those 4 parts again, and I want you to listen for the part that you think is maybe different from the other 3. Yodele kikia yodele cuckoo, yodele kikia yodele cuckoo, yodele kikia yodele cuckoo, yodele kikia oh. Which one is different of those 4? And usually they can identify that the 4th part is different. Why? Because it's shorter. Yes, and actually it's great because when I use my fingers as an example of like part 1, part 2, part 3, part 4, because that's what I'm doing as a visual, my pinky is shorter than the other 3, so like it makes sense. Okay, now of the 3 that are left, I think 2, well, they all have the same words, but I think 2 of them sound really similar, or maybe even the same, and I think there's maybe one that's different. Just listen and see if you agree with me. And so then I sing them again, and we identify that phrase 1 and phrase 3 are exactly the same. If the kid says like phrase 2 and 3 are the same, I will sing them back to back, right? And I'll be like, or I'll play on the piano. Sometimes the timbre change helps, but I'll do them back to back so kids can hear them, and then they hear it. We can compare and contrast. No, those are not the same. Musically, they're not the same. Maybe the words are the same. Musically, they're not the same. So we go through and do those 4 parts. And I find that if I do this back and forth and ask them questions, and I have to sing it for them 4 or 5 times, by the time I ask them like, hey, will you sing an echo and let's learn these parts, they've got it like that because they've heard the example several times. Then we add body percussion. The body percussion's easy. Yodele kikia, yodele cuckoo. Just a pat and clap and snap and pat and clap and snap. Yodele kikia, yodele cuckoo. The only one's different is the fourth phrase. Yodele kikia, oh. And then the song is fun because the song, what happens is there's something that comes along and interrupts every time the yodeler goes out to sing. Something interrupts him. So I always, like tell the story. Oh, what a beautiful day to go yodeling out in the Alps. I can't wait to go yodeling. And my accent is obviously not great. So I say this, and then as I sing each of the 4 phrases, yodele kikia, yodele cuckoo. Wait, do you hear something? What was that sound? I will ignore it. Yodele kiki. I like act out the story, right? And then in between each one, I say like, I'm hearing something. Do you hear what that is? And again, it's like, it's getting them to think about like, I'm listening for something. I'm listening for something specific. So this whole thing, yes, it's a camp song and it's silly, but it's getting kids to start thinking about listening specifically, listening for form, listening for certain things. So let me show you quickly the PowerPoint. And these are all just, that's not what I want to show you. The PowerPoint that I put together. And these are all just visuals from Google or whatever. It's not anything fancy or anything. So the different parts of the story that happen are first there's an avalanche, and so for the avalanche I did this little animation thing that like shows them like, you know, avalanche is, you know, a lot of snow, and actually if you were going to see it close up it'd be more like that than before. It'd be like a rushing cloud coming at you. And we talk about you can't have an avalanche in Kansas because you don't get enough snow and there are no mountains, so you know, why do we don't have to worry about them, no big deal. After the avalanche, so you add that into the song, and it interrupts in between each of the phrases. Yodele kikia, yodele cuckoo, rumble, rumble, yodele kikia, yodele cuckoo, rumble, rumble, yod. You know, so in between each of the phrases it interrupts. After the avalanche comes a grizzly bear, and then we are interrupted by a skier who almost collides with us, very traumatic. And then are saved by a Saint Bernard. And then comes a milking maid. All of this is part of this, like, you know, silly little story that I've made up. And then there's a pretty girl who has a pack of goats. Very exciting. Anyway, so then in following weeks, once we've learned the song, there's some really cool videos you can find. I found this one, just I like typed yodeling man. There's a really fun little video of him singing, and then it's singing and then a verse and singing in a verse, and he sings in German, so that's really cool. So it's a great example of the yodeler. And then there's the yodeling boy who sings in Walmart and got picked up to be on the Ellen Show. So this is another fun version of like yodeling, but this is yodeling in like country music, and how's that similar or different? And then there's a clip of him on Ellen, because he goes on Ellen, he sings a song, and then Ellen gets him a trip to go to the Grand Ole Opry and perform the Grand Ole Opry, which is really exciting. But anyway, we can make that connection between like yodeling traditional and yodeling current, or more integrated into what you would hear now. Anyway, okay, so that's like my main third grade lesson. And honestly, that breaks up between two different lessons, because if I'm doing other things in the lesson or if other stuff is happening, we'll maybe get through like avalanche, grizzly bear, and the rest of the story will come in another week. Right, or depending on how long it takes, depending on how many connections we make, it might be a little bit different. But it can break up between two lessons, just like some of the stuff we did in second grade could break up between two lessons or could be revisited in another lesson. You could start with creating on whiteboards in one and then come back and do magic number on another day. But there's a lot that you can do sort of back and forth. Okay, I hope this gave you some ideas for what you might do this week, next week, coming up, some ideas of things you might want to try. If you have any questions, you know, please shoot me an email, makemomentsmatter@gmail.com, or you can leave a question wherever you're listening to or watching this, and I'll try and come back and answer some of those. But I'm going to be back here next week with more lesson ideas. I'm going to try and do a little bit more of the like skim through all K through 5 next week. This was intensive on just second and third, but I wanted to get through some more of the process, so I hope that's okay. Couple quick things. I'll see you next week for more ideas, but also if you're looking for that supplemental help, stuff you might need if you want to start doing ukulele in your classroom, check out Ukulele 101. It's this new course I put together, lots of different things that you can use. Hopefully it's 40 videos, 4.5 hours of content, from what ukulele to pick out and use to teach myself or use with my class, to how do I teach these chords, what order, how do I do strumming, what next, all sorts of stuff. So there are lots of things packed in there if you're interested. And you can check that out. There's a link on the links page, or just go to courses.makemomentsmatter.org. All right, everyone. Thanks so much for coming along with me this week. It's been great to see you. I'll see you all next week. Bye, everyone.